nkora akazi ka police.
They talked about it already. I am a police officer.
Uyu n'umwaka w'umunani mwaka utanzageza imyaka 8 ndi muri akazi.
Next year, in the coming year, I'll have 8 years within the job.
Wakomeza tambuke niko narimvuze niko kazi nkora mu buzima busanzwe.
Like I had just said, that is the job that I do in my day-to-day life.
Twaje kugira ngo dutange inspiration.
We came so that we can give inspiration.
Kugira ngo duheze cyane cyane abasore bacu bumve yuko aho twavuye ariho bavuye kandi ibyo twagezeho bashobora no kurenza ibyacu.
So that we can tell our youth and young men here that they can understand that where we came from is where also they came from, and they can get to what we've achieved.
Ntabwo twaje kwihaya, ntabwo twaje kwishira hejuru, twaje gusangira namwe ibyo twagezeho.
We didn't come here to toot our own horns or to put ourselves great. We came to share with you guys what we know.
Hariya nashatse kwerekana ahantu navuye naho ngeze, ahantu nagiye nca hose.
Over there, I wanted to show where I came from and where I am.
Guhera mu bijombo Uvira umanutse kajya kwisaha Bukavu Gatumba mu Rwanda nabaye gatoya Imwaro San Diego na Bire naho nduye.
Starting from Bijombo to Uvira to Bukavu to Gatumba all the way down to Abilene.
Impamvu nabikoze nuko wenda hari umuntu ushobora kureba hari akavuga ati nanje uziko nageze Bukavu uziko nanje nabaye Imwaro. Ibyo ngibyo bituma umuntu yumva yuko niba mbese yumva yuko ari ku rwego rumwe, turi ku rwego rumwe nubwo wenda nageze ahandi.
The reason why I did it is because somebody might look at it and say, I've also been to Bukavu, I've also been Imwaro. It's so that they can see that we're on the same page.
Hari umuntu avuga ikintu wenda umuntu akavuga ngo uriya niwe ariko duteka imwe twese turi bamwe.
There's sometimes when someone says something and people say, oh, that's just him, but we're all the same.
Komeza.
Continue.
Hariya nashatse kubyerekana mu mashusho.
Over here I wanted to show it within images.
Urabona kanisa niyo nagiyemo nakoreyemo Sunday school nkiri umwana.
You can see that church. That church is where I grew up with in Sunday school.
Urebye munsi n'amasomo nigiyeho.
If you look below, that's the education that I received.
No wakomeza imbere urabona inkambi ziri nabayemo ya Gatumba n'Imwaro munsi.
If you can continue, you can see the 2 refugee camps that I lived in Gatumba.
Iburyo urahabona ndangije masters hejuru ndangije n'Igipolici munsi.
To the right, you'll see me finishing my masters and then also completing my officer position.
Yeah, noneho iburyo urahabona nyine masters na PhD.
And then on the right you'll see the masters and the PhD.
Muyandi magambo nashatse kwereka hari ukuntu abantu bavuga ikintu ariko wakibona mu shusho ukabona kuzumva neza cyane.
In other words, I wanted to show it. Sometimes people say something, but when you see it in an image, it's much better.
Muri nashatse kwerekana wenda ndacyari muri presentation cyangwa se muri introduction nakoze PhD project yanje yari ku Banyamulenge.
I'm still in my introduction for my PhD project. It was over the Banyamulenge.
Nashatse kwiga ni immigrants perceptions of police cyangwa se uko abimukira babona abapolisi hano muri Amerika.
I wanted to study and learn the immigrant perceptions of police officers, or how those of us view the officers.
Ariko mfata case y'Abanyamulenge kandi sinavuze Abanyamulenge bose.
But I took the case of the Banyamulenge, but I didn't talk about all the Banyamulenge.
Nakoze kuri case y'abantu bacitse ku icumu mu Lubumbashi muri 1998.
My case focused on those that were in Lubumbashi.
Komeza. Aha ni igitabo ndangije kwandika cyangwa se kiri hanze ubu nyine abantu benshi barakibonye.
Over here, this is a book that I just finished writing. It's already out. Many people have already seen it.
Igitabo rero kirimo guhera mu bijombo kugeza uyu munsi nashatse kwerekana yuko ibyo nanyuzemo aho nanyuze hose nabyanditse biri mu gitabo noneho.
I want to show that everything that I went through, I wrote it and it's in a book.
Ndarangije rero twinjire mu isomo.
Let us enter into the study.
Hariya nashakishije ifoto y'Igisirimba ariko sinayibona.
Over here I was looking for a picture for Igisirimba, but I couldn't find it.
Hariho za YouTube nizo zihari cyane.
A lot of them are on
Ariko nabo
YouTube.
ko barabyina nk'abayumbe.
But they're also dancing like abayumbe.
Kubera iki nashatse kubivuga nabivuzeho muri Abilene ubushize.
I talked about it in Abilene last time.
Ndagira ngo ahangaha ndagira ngo abayumbe benshi y'Igisirimba.
I think here there's a lot of
Ariko
bayumbe.
nashatse kwerekana abantu hanze bafashe Igisirimba gute.
I wanted to show people outside how do they view Igisirimba.
Igiterane twakoze cyangwa conference twakoze muri Abilene abantu bambonye kuri poster.
The conference that we did in Abilene, people saw me on the poster.
Barambwira ngese ngo byagenze gute ngese wayo muyumbe nawe.
And they asked me what happened, are you a Muyumbe now?
byarambabaje kubera yuko numvise yuko abacu b'abayumbe ni gute hanze tubafata.
It made me very sad because it made me question those of us that are Banyamulenge, how are we viewed outside?
Mu yandi magambo no kuvuga ngo mugende mwubaka izina reputation nziza mu bandi bantu.
In other words, go and build a name, build a good reputation within people.
Hanyuma turavuga ku bintu byihuta twihuta turavuga ku burenganzira bwawe cyangwa se amategeko criminal justice system.
We're going to talk about quickly about your rights and the criminal justice system.
Komeza.
Continue.
Kubijanye n'uburenganzira hariho constitution abantu batazi wenda cyangwa se batarasoma constitution ya Amerika.
We have a constitution for those that don't know or haven't read the Constitution of America.
Amendment ya mbere itanga uburenganzira ku bantu bose.
The First Amendment gives freedom to everyone.
Uburenganzira bwo kuvuga, uburenganzira bwo kugira ikanisa cyangwa se idini.
The freedom of speech or religion.
Uburenganzira bwo kuba wakwitwarira leta ukavuga ati leta yangiriye nabi reka nyirege ibintu nk'ibyo.
The right to petition the government.
Uburenganzira amendment ya kabiri ifite igweza uburenganzira bwo gutunga imbunda.
The Second Amendment gives you the right to keep and bear arms.
Muri Texas yo warabyoroheje nyine ntibisaba no kuaplika no kugenda mu isoko ukagura imbunda.
In Texas it's so much easier now. You don't even have to apply. You just have to go to the store and buy a gun.
Gusa bifite ufite uburenganzira bwo gutunga imbunda ariko kandi hariho risk hariho ibyo ugomba kumenya mu gutunga yawe.
You have a right to own a gun, but there's also a risk in you owning that gun.
Amendment ya 14 nagiye natanzira zitatu gusa kubera ko ari z'abantu wenda numva zishobora kubareba.
I gave those three because most people know them.
Subira gatoya inyuma ya 14 ivuga yuko abantu bose bafite uburenganzira bumwe.
The 14th Amendment talks about how everyone has equal protection.
Twebwe twaje hano turi impunzi n'abavukiye hano twese turaresha mu.
Those of us that came as refugees and those that were born here, we're all the same.
Ari umuntu wabimbaje muri Bibiliya nambaza ngese ngo ko bazavuga nk'umwimukira wakoze amakosa hano ngo bazamusubiza iwabo.
Somebody in Abilene last time asked me, what is, they talk about if you mess up or do something wrong, they send you back.
Ntekereza yuko naje kubitekeza nyuma nibuka yuko none se wavukiye hano wakora ikosa bakagusubiza iwanyu he handi ni hano iwanyu.
I thought about it and I realized if you were born here and you mess up, they can't really send you home because this is your home.
Amategeko avuga ku buryo batopfa kohereza gusa ngo wakoze ahubwo bo gufunga ariko ntibo kwamapfa kohereza iwanyu gusa.
There's a certain way that the laws state that they can't just deport you or send you back.
Criminal justice system rero iri mu bice bitatu irimo police irimo inkiko irimo jail cyangwa se prison.
The criminal justice system is within three parts. It's got the police, the courts and the corrections.
Abapolisi nibo bafata abantu mu mihanda nibo babaja noneho bakaja mu nkiko abahamwe n'ibyaha bakaja mu.
The police are the one that arrests people and punish them for their crimes.
Ndavuga ku bintu bijanye n'uburyo abantu bakora ibyaha uburyo amategeko yanditse mu byaha.
I will talk about how people commit those sins or crimes.
Narebye cyane ku bijanye na Texas na Utah.
I looked specifically upon Texas and Utah.
Ndagenda mpabisobanura nyuma hariho intentionally, knowingly, recklessly.
I'll explain it later. There's intentionally, knowingly, recklessly.
Reka mvuge kuri intentionally.
Let me talk about intentionally.
Abumva icyongereza baracumva ariko ni uburyo bwo gukora icyaha ukigambira ukavuga ngo ngiye gukora icyaha ngiye kugikora nkana.
Those who know English understand it, but it's a way of saying I'm going to commit a crime and you plan it.
Impamvu nabizanye n'ukubera yuko hari ukuntu abantu hari mu myaka nkinga ishize hari umukobwa w'umurundi wamwoye inzoga arasinda.
The reason why I've said it is like in the past few years there's a Burundian girl that got drunk.
Noneho tware muri jail barampamagara ngo nje kumusobanurira.
When they took her to jail, they called me to come translate.
Ahageze kubera nyine z'ya system z'iwacu zo gusaba imbabazi ahita apfukama imbere y'umupolisi ngo namubare ngo nyabone mbare.
When she got there, because of our system from back home, she knelt before the cop and asked for forgiveness.
Umupolisi aramubwira ati ntabwo arinjira gufunze wafunzwe n'icyaha wakoze.
The police officer said, I'm not the one arresting you. You were arrested because of the crime that you committed.
Impamvu nabizanye biriya bitandukanye rero n'ukubera yuko hari ukuntu abantu bakora amakosa akavuga ngo sinari nabigambiriye ni ibintu byanshikiye hano hari ukuntu amategeko aguhana n'ubwo utabigambiriye.
The reason why I brought it is because some people mess up or commit crimes and they said I didn't plan or I didn't prepare it. Here in America there's a way that they punish you if you prepare it.
Ahangaha rero n'umuntu wakoze icyaha nkana komeza mwunguru. Ahangaha ni igihe umuntu yakoze icyaha kizi ukuzi ko agikora.
This is when someone commits a crime knowing that they're doing it.
biragoye kubitandukanya ariko noneho wagiye gukora icyaha nkana ariko ahangaha wakoze icyaha uzi ko wagikora wagikoze nzi ko mpangikora.
Here it's different because you're committing the crime and you know that you're committing the crime.
Ahangaha ni mu buryo bwa reckless cyangwa se gukora icyaha nko guhutaza gusukama. Urabona ifoto nashize y'umuntu utambuka hejuru y'amabuye ahumirije mbese kwa ugenda gusa.
This is when someone acts recklessly and they just commit the crimes recklessly.
Ahangaha ni bijanye n'uburyo umuntu akora icyaha yirengagije ko akora icyaha.
This is when someone commits the crime but through negligence.
Ukagenda wenda utwaye imodoka ufite n'icupa ry'inzoga urabizi ko ukora icyaha ariko wabyirengagije wabyihoreye.
You could probably be driving but you also have a bottle of alcohol in your hand.
Hari uburyo hano bahana ibyaha cyane cyane ku muntu wakoze icyaha yisubiriye akoze icyaha inshuro nyinshi.
There's a way that they punish those that commit those crimes, especially if they do it multiple times.
Ririya ni itegeko ryo muri California ryitwa kuriya rivuga yuko ukoze icyaha bwa mbere bwa kabiri bwa gatatu uri out. Babijanye cyane cyane mu bintu bijanye n'akabumbu hano mbese ijambere rya kabiri rya gatatu uri out.
That's a law that's within California that says if you commit the crime the first time, second time or third time you're completely out.
Reka mvuge ku byaha bitandukanye cyangwa se uburyo inzego zitandukanye z'ibyaha muri Texas.
Let me talk about the different levels.
Hariho class C ni icyaha cyo hasi cyo ku rwego rwo hasi.
There's a class C crime which is on the bottom.
Kari iriya citation tubona ya speed cyangwa
like a speeding ticket or citation.
Cyangwa umuntu wenda wibye ikintu kiri mu mafaranga ari munsi $100.
Or maybe if somebody stole something that's under $100.
Class B rero iri ku muntu wakoze icyaha wenda yibye ikintu kiri hagati $100 na $750.
Class B is for a person who commits a crime and maybe they steal money between $100 and $750.
Arashobora gufungwa mu gihe kigeze ku minsi 180.
They could be arrested for 180 days.
Class A ni umuntu uhera ku bihumbi 4 ashobora gufungwa mu gihe cy'umwaka cyangwa ibizombi.
Class A starts from 4,000 and they can be arrested for a year.
Reka mvuge kuri kaya kantu urana hano nanditse ngo kubabara gusa umuntu pastor yabivuze ukoze ku muntu wenda cyangwa wenda uramufashe cyane uramunyoye akababara gusa.
Let me talk about that part that I wrote where it just says being hurt, like you touch someone and you hurt them.
Kubabara gusa ko nyine guhita gukura icyaha kuri class C ikagera kuri class A ukaba wafungwa mu gihe cy'umwaka.
If somebody is hurt within that action, just them being hurt can take you from class C to class A and you could be arrested for a year.
Now state jail felony ni urashobora gufungwa mu gihe hagati y'iminsi 180 n'imyaka 2.
But a state jail felony, you can be arrested from 180 days to 2 years.
Third degree felony imyaka 2 kugeza ku 10.
A third degree felony is from 2 years to 10 years.
Second degree felony imyaka 2 kugeza kuri 20.
A second degree felony is from 2 years to 20 years.
First degree felony hagati y'imyaka 5 n'99.
A first degree felony is from 5 to 99 years.
Hanyuma sinzi narakibagiwe hariya hasi hariho capital felony umuntu wakoze icyaha agacira urubanza igihano cyo gupfa.
It's on the bottom, I forgot it. Capital?
Yeah, capital.
Where it's a capital felony. It's where they are basically arrested till death.
Na muri Texas ugiye kwandika muri Google hari prison imwe iba nk'abantu bari kuri schedule yo kwicwa.
If you Google it, in Texas, there's prisons that have people scheduled while they're imprisoned and they get a death sentence.
Na abantu baba barakoze ibyaha birenze umuntu akavuga ngo uyu nguyu azapfa uyu munsi bakamuheza n'umwanya wo kwirega no kuvuga amagambo yo yanyu.
It's people who commit crimes that are over the top to where they give them a death sentence.
Niyo yatambutse. Ahangaha navugaga ibintu bitwa ngo ni enhancements cyangwa se gukomeza icyaha cyangwa se igihano wahanwa ubwa mbere ugasura kandi ugakora irindi kosa ugahanwa cyane noneho byihanukira.
This talks about the enhancements or strengthening the crimes or the actions that you've committed.
Bareba ku makosa wakoze mu myaka yashize.
They look at your previous convictions.
Cyangwa wenda ugiye gukora ikosa ufite intwaro ufite imbunda ufite imbugita ufite igiti.
Or you're about to commit a crime and you have a deadly weapon.
Ufite igiti gusa barashobora kugikosa ndere nk'umuntu ufite intwaro.
If you have even just a wooden stick, they might consider it a weapon.
Cyangwa brick gusa wenda
or even a brick.
brick.
If you're about to hit someone with a brick.
Barashobora kwifata nk'umuntu wagiye kwita umuntu afite imbunda.
They might take it as someone who's going to hit someone with a gun.
cyangwa icyaha cyakorewe iruhande rw'amasomo,
or a crime that is committed at school,
cyangwa icyaha cyakorewe umwana muto, umuntu mukuru, cyangwa se umuntu ubanye n'ubumuga, cyangwa umuntu ufite inda,
or where the victim is a child or they have a disability.
reka mvuge naye ntora tuntu dukeya cyane, ni ibyaha byinshi bihanwa.
I picked a few things. There are many different punishments.
ariko natoye utuntu wenda abantu benshi dushobora kuba tudukoraho nubwo n'ibindi byose twobikora kimwe n'abandi bose.
I picked things that we could probably all do.
ikintu cyo gusiga nk'umwana, urabona kujya dusiga nk'abana mu rugo, ugasiga umwana ukaja mu isoko.
Like leaving your child, you know how we leave the child at home and go to the store?
hagize ikibazo kiba bagasanga wataye umwana, wirengagije umwana, wamutaye mu nzu utitaye kubisigara bimubaho.
If there was an issue and they found that you left the child by themselves,
urashobora guhanishwa igihano kigera ku myaka byibuze nk'icumi cyangwa 20.
you could be punished for 10 or 20 years.
mu gihe hari evidence, hari ibihamya bigaragaza.
If there's evidence that proves it.
simvuga yuko umuntu wese usize umwana wese ashobora ari muri cyo cyaha.
I'm not saying that everyone that leaves their children is committing that crime.
kubijanye wenda icyaha cya kabiri nanditse umwarimu wagiranye relationship n'umwana afunze.
The second crime that I wrote down was an improper relationship from like a teacher and a student.
n'icyaha gikomeye cyane.
It's a very important crime.
tuvuge hariya wenda gucira umuntu,
To spit on someone.
gucira umuntu n'icyaha, ni nko kubabaza umuntu. gucira umuntu gusa,
To spit on someone, just spitting on someone is like hurting someone.
uciriye nk'umupolisi ho n'icyaha kirazamuka cyane.
If you spit on a police officer, it increases.
icyaha cyitwa ngo ni iteko ryitwa ngo ni harbor runaway.
The next one that's called the harbor runaway.
umwana wenda wa mugenzi wawe arahunze, yanze kumvira itegeko ry'umubyeyi.
Let's say your friend's child runs away, they don't want to obey their parent.
yamara agahungira, wowe ukamuhisha.
And you hide the child.
wenda uri nyirasenge, uri se wabo, umwana agiye
Maybe you're a relative or an aunt of the child.
wenda umubyeyi yatanze raporo y'uko umwana yagiye atamwumviye.
Maybe the parent gave a report that the child wasn't obeying.
kubera yuko amategeko ya Texas yemerewe ababyeyi guhana abana.
The laws within Texas allow parents to punish their kids.
uramuhana ariko mu buryo nyine undi muntu aje atobona yuko wari ukeneye kumwica.
You punish them, but in a way that if somebody else were to come, they don't see that you're trying to kill them.
iyo wafashe umwana rero wahunze, ihaniro ry'ababyeyi ukamuhisha n'icyaha.
So if you harbor a child that ran away from home, it's a crime.
criminal trespass ni igihe umuntu akubwiye ngo ntungerere mu rugo ukarugeramo, cyangwa se polisi ikabwira ngo tukongere gusubira hariya, umara ugasubirayo, urahanwa.
A criminal trespass is when someone tells you do not come to my home or household, or the police tell you to not go back and then you go back.
UMV ni igihe umuntu yatwaye imodoka, ugatwara imodoka, tuvuge ku rugero wenda Gishare wenda n'inshuti yanje asanzwe ntizi imodoka, ariko uyu munsi ntabwo yayintije ariko kayitwara.
A UUMV, let's say for example, Richard is my friend. He gives me his car or lets me borrow his car, and then today he doesn't give it to me, and I take it anyway.
Iyo mpamagaye polisi ibyinjiramo kera ntabwo bwa bushuti bwarangira.
If I call the cops, it gets involved within it. That friendship is over.
Fail to ID.
A fail to ID.
Igihe umupolisi iguhagaritse yamara kubaza amazina yawe ugatanga wenda uri Richard ukavuga ngo ndi Alex.
It's like when an officer stops you and they ask for your ID, and if your name is Richard, you say I'm Alex.
Hari umunsi umwe umwana umwe wo muri Congo Brazza baramuhagaritse, nari mu kazi ariko nabacu bamuhagaritse.
There was one child from Congo.
Noneho arabesha avuga izina ry'ino ritari ry'ikinyafrika.
He lied and said a name from here that is not an African name.
No ngo bamureye muri system basanga iryo zina ntiri habo.
And when they looked within the system, they couldn't find that name.
Basanga yabesha uwo mwanya bahita bamutwara.
They found that he had lied, and in that moment, they took him away.
Nashatse kugaragaza utuntu dushobora gukora twagushira mu bibazo utabizi ko wakoze.
I wanted to show you small things that you might do that could cause you trouble.
Hariya resist arrest search na transport niki gihe polisi gufashe wamara ukayirwanya.
Over there where it talks about resist arrest, search or transports, when an officer stops you and then you resist them.
Hariya evade arrest cyangwa detention niki gihe polisi tuvuga polisi zikinjira ubunyine wenda babahamagaye ntituzi impamvu baje hano.
Evade arrest over there, let's say for example the officers come in and we don't know why they're here.
Namara nje nababona nkagira ubwo nkirukanga.
And then when I see them, I become afraid and I run away.
Nubwo ntacarakoze ubwo ico kibaye cyaho umwanya.
Even though I didn't commit any crime, it's a crime within that moment.
Kubera yuko mpunze polisi kandi ico gihe wahunze yuko iguhagarika ngikubaze kiba icyaha.
Because I'm avoiding the cops, you are escaping the fact that they were going to stop you and ask you questions.
Harassment ni igihe uheza umuntu ku nkeke wenda ukamwandikira yakubwiye ati hagarika ibintu warengesheje ugakomeza ukamwandikira. Icyo ni icyaha.
Harassment is when, for example, you keep reaching out to someone and you start harassing them and they tell you to stop, but you continue.
Komeza. Reka tugere ku bintu bijanye no gutwara imodoka sasa.
Let us talk about stuff that has to do with driving a car.
Umuntu ufite driver license yiwe ayifate mu ntoki.
Everyone who has their driver's license, hold it in your hand.
Umuntu ufite driver license hari akantu keneye gusobanura abantu benshi batazi.
Everyone who has a driver's license. I want to explain this, especially those from back home.
Ariko cyane ndavuga kuri driver license hano muri Texas niyo nshaka kuvuga.
But I want to talk about the driver's license here in Texas.
Niba kuri driver license handitse A.
If on your driver's license it says A,
ugomba gutwara imodoka wambaye amadinete utayambaye ni kibazo.
you have to drive your car with glasses. If you don't wear them, that's a problem.
Niba driver license handitse B.
If your driver's license has a B,
bisobanuye yuko udashobora gutwara imodoka wenyine utari kumwe n'umuntu uri byibuze ufite imyaka 21 iruhande rwawe.
It means you cannot drive the car by yourself. If you're under 21 years old, you have to have somebody with you.
Bafite class B ni ishano ryose.
And those who have a class B, it's
muri
big
Texas
issue.
bazamaguriza nk'imyaka ine yo gutegereza igihe uzakorera.
In Texas, they give you 10 years to retake the test.
Abo rero tubafata igihe byagenze gutigiye bakoze impanuka.
How do we capture those when they have an accident?
Yakora impanuka ugasanga afite class none kamuheza ikibazo yakoze mu mpanuka ukamuheza n'ijya class B kubera ko ntiyemere gutwara imodoka wenyine.
When they crash or they have an accident, you find that they are that, and then you continue to punish them.
Komeza.
Continue.
Reka we guhindura adresse niba wimutse ugomba guhindura adresse abantu benshi barabyirengagiza cyane.
Change of address. If you move, you have to change your address. A lot of people know this.
Hano muri Texas urana iwagendera mu ibarabara udafite imodoka.
Here in Texas, you know, like when you're driving and you don't.
Ugenda n'imodoka, ugenda n'amaguru.
When you're walking.
Iyo umuhanda udafite sidewalk hariya ugendera ku ruhande.
If the road doesn't have a sidewalk, you have to go to the side.
Amategeko ya Texas avuga yuko ugomba kugenda mu ruhande rw'imodoka zihazize.
The laws of Texas say that you have to go on the side of the cars that are coming.
No kuvuga ngo ugendera mu moso imodoka zihaza kugira ngo uzirebe. Apana kugendera hariya ng'imodoka zizi inyuma yawe.
It's to say you go on the left so that you can see the cars coming instead of going behind them.
Iyo ni ikosa polisi guhagaritse wavuga ngo yakurenganyije ko ni ikosa nta kugenda imodoka ziri inyuma ahubwo ugenda uruhande rw'imoso imodoka ziza gucyuzureba kubera ngo ubone imodoka igihe ishobora no kugonga.
You go from the left side so that you can see the cars coming in case they were to crash you.
Ndatambuka mpanyihuta abantu ndagira ngo hano abantu bagitanga gutwara ID itari yawe driver license itari yawe ngo uyiteka ari yawe ijya byiwacu bagazavuga ngo gutira amakarita nayo ngo zarashize.
I think here you guys
hano ni cyaha gikomeye cyane gutira ikarita y'undi muntu ngo uyigendere.
To take someone else's ID is a big punishment.
Abantu batwara imodoka bitonze cyane naco kirashobora kuba ikibazo abandi bagenda biga bagenda basusumira.
Those who drive very slowly, it can also be an issue, especially those that are still learning.
Imodoka niba utwaye imodoka ukabona imodoka ziri inyuma zawe zatsa amatara polisi cyangwa se ambulance.
If you are driving and you see the ambulance or the cops coming,
iyo udahagaze ni ikibazo kandi hari igihe uja guhagarika umuntu waje kumuhagarika kugira ngo sinari mbizi ko ari njewe none se bari kumenya gute utahagaze.
If you don't stop, it's a big issue.
Kubijanye na seatbelt.
Concerning seatbelts.
Abantu benshi turabizi basuzugura kwambara imikaba.
Many people who look down on wearing a seatbelt.
Cyangwa wicaye inyuma kavuga ngo umukaba ngo tunde.
Or those sitting in the back and say it doesn't concern me, it's just the driver.
Utambaye umukaba uri umuntu mukuru urengeje imyaka 18.
If a cop stops you and you're not wearing a seatbelt and you're an adult, you're over 18.
Mbese wicaye mu modoka y'undi muntu undi aratwaye sibyo.
And you're sitting in someone else's car and someone else is driving.
Baguheza tike ni wishura wenyine kubera ko urengeje imyaka 18.
They give you a ticket, you pay that ticket by yourself because you're over 18.
Ariko niba ntwaye imodoka ndi kumwe n'abana bari munsi ya 18.
But if I'm driving the car with children that are under 18
ntibambara imikaba
and they're not wearing seatbelts,
polisi ni mbaga rikajya tike nizo yishura.
When the cops stop me, I'm the one who's going to pay that ticket, the one that's driving.
Abana umwana utagejeje imyaka 8 ntageze kiriya ruya rugero cyangwa siriya buriya burebure 4 feet 9 inches.
A child who's not 8 years old or 4 foot 9.
Yeah. Uwo nguwo agomba kwambara car seat.
That child has to be in a car seat.
Atari muri car seat cyangwa arashobora kutaregeza imyaka 8 ariko ari muremure.
They could
Icyo
not be
gihe nta
8 years old,
kibazo.
but they could be
Ashobora
tall.
kwambuka bisanzwe gusa.
They can just wear a regular seatbelt.
Komeza.
Continue.
Icyaha kijanye no kunanirwa guhagarara igihe basi iri imbere yawe, urabona bisi z'abana ikakwereka stop ariko ugakomeza.
The punishment that has to do with you failing to stop when you see the school bus.
Mu gihe tuvuge wenda ntwaye imodoka umuntu aragonzwe naniwe guhagarara ngo mwiteho.
Let's say, for example, you're driving and somebody else crashes and you don't stop to help them.
Icyaha kijanye no kugongana mana kagenda polisi taraza ngahunga.
Another punishment that has to do with me crashing and then escaping the scene before the cops come.
Kijanye no kuvuga yuko nta mwana uri munsi y'imyaka 18 ushobora kugendera muri truck inyuma muri bed.
There is no child that is under 18 that is allowed to go in the truck in the back.
Bijya by'iwacu nyine abantu bagagendera abantu ndabwira abantu bafite amatraki wenda cyane hanga.
I'm talking about people who have trucks or the young men who have trucks here.
Komeza.
Continue.
Okay, reka mvuge ku cyaha kijanye domestic violence ni cyaha gikomeye cyane abantu barwana umugabo n'umugore cyangwa se girlfriend na boyfriend.
Let me talk about domestic violence. It's a very big crime. It's when a husband and a wife fight.
Ni ikintu gikomeye cyane Texas ifata habe nubwo wakubiswe adakeneye kujana wa wundi mu kibazo state yo nyine yabyinjiramo yonyine.
It's something that Texas takes very seriously, even if the person that was hit or abused doesn't want to go to court.
Kubera yuko ni abantu bicanira benshi abantu bicana bataziranye ni bake.
Because that's when most people kill themselves.
Komeza.
Or kill each other.
Ndavuga kandi gatoya kubijanye na civil law dukora criminal law niyo tuzi niyo twiga.
I'm going to talk briefly on things that have to do with civil law. We do criminal law. That is what we learn.
Muri Texas niba wararise umuntu cyangwa se wegereje umuntu mu wawe akamara nk'amezi angaha ari mu nzu.
In Texas, if you welcome someone and they're in your house or home for a few months,
abayamaze kugira residency abamaze kugira hatuye.
They have a residency. They have a place that they live.
Iyo bibaye ngombwa utakimukene muri yanzu yawe.
When it becomes necessary that you no longer need them in your house,
niwopfa kumuhinda gusa ngo bamubwira ngo birarangiye so bwene.
You can't just tell him you need to leave.
Tibishoboka ugomba kuja mu rukiko ukuza makaratasi yuko wa muntu takimukene.
That's impossible. You have to go to court and fill out files so that they can leave.
Abantu benshi tibazumva be n'abaturage bahano tibazumva.
Many people don't understand it. Even the locals from here, they feel as if the house is theirs. I can kick him out whenever.
Komeza.
Continue.
Reka mvuge kubijanye n'imshisi cyangwa se inyamaswa pet.
Let me talk about animals or pets.
Nashize ya foto ni ukuntu twakundaga guteranya imfizi ruguru wacu sibyo.
I put that picture there and I remembered how we used to pin the cows against each other.
Hano nica ritegeko rihana abantu bateranya imshisi inyamaswa.
Here it's a crime because it's animal cruelty.
Tuvuga wenda utunze ufite imbwa zingahe uraziteranyije zararwanya.
Let's say you have a couple dogs and you get them to fight.
Urahanwa amateka araguhana.
The laws would punish you.
Ibijanye na animal cruelty subira nyuma gatoya.
Stuff concerning animal cruelty.
Umukobwa wanjye arabwira ngo nzamugurira imbwa akamubwira ati tuzi ibintu biri mu mategeko yo gutunga imbwa.
My daughter tells me to buy her a dog and I tell her you don't know the laws that concern taking care of a dog.
Imbwa cyangwa nyabu wayimye ibyo kurya wayimye amazi.
A dog or a cat, let's say you don't give it food or water.
Birashobora kuva ku cyaha cya class A nababwiye kikagera kuri second degree felony.
It might go from a class A to a second degree felony.
It's
a very big crime. It's greater than hitting someone.
Komeza. Abaturage barabimenye kutayamwoye kubera yuko niba yashonje cyane yagize inyota cyane yiriwe bazamuhamagara ko bati umuturanyi wanje imbwa yiwe irashaka gupfa.
The neighbors will know when you don't feed her or give her water because it will be dehydrated and outside and they will tell them. So those that like to own dogs and cats know that there's a crime.
Police contact.
I have a few minutes to talk about police contact. I've seen it for a while now wherever I stop someone and when they see that it's someone from back home they start speaking our language. Sometimes they get out of the mood of being stopped by an officer. But that does not work.
niba yakoze amakosa arafungwa. Hari abantu bazambaza ngese ngo umaze gufunga ngo Banyafrika cyane abana bukeye.
If he made that mistake, they will get arrested. There's people that ask me, have you arrested Africans? Yes.
Cyane.
Yes.
Polisi iyo guhagaritse hari ibintu zo kwitondera.
When the police officers stop you, there's stuff that you need to look over.
Yeah, hari ugomba kumenya yuko amaboko yawe ari kuri vola.
You have to know that your hands have to be on the wheel.
Kubera iki?
Why?
Hari abantu bazavuga ngo abapolisi tugira ubwoba.
There are people that say that officers were scared.
Ugize ngo urebe kuri internet abapolisi bicwa ku mwaka muri Amerika wotangara.
If you look at on the internet how many officers die a year, you would be surprised.
Nibyo batwigisha rero kugira ngo dapfa.
That's what they teach us so that we don't die, so that we can go home.
Rero amaboko yawe yari hariya kuri vola.
When your hands are on the wheel,
inzana numva ndatekanye.
I'm at peace.
Kubera yuko imaze ko nta kundi ko gatatu ufite kuja gutora imbune ngo kundase.
Because I know you're not going to take your arm to try to grab a weapon or a gun.
Iyo ni banga rikomeye cyane.
That's a very big secret.
Apana byabindi umuntu aguhagarika ugatangira gukora mu mifuka. Umuntu amavuga ati azanye imbunda ukamutangira kwifata kuruhande.
Not when someone stops you and you start touching your pockets.
Ikindi kandi nubona amatara bige navuze.
Another thing, when you see the lights, what I talked about earlier.
Nagaritse umuhungu umwe w'umunyamurenge muri Abirene umunsi umwe.
I stopped a Banyamulenge boy in Abilene.
No twege duhagarika imodoka ntabwo duhagarika abantu.
When we stop a car, we stop the car, we don't stop the person.
Kubera yuko ntubuze umuntu utwaye.
Because you don't know who's driving it.
Uzuhagarika imodoka yakoze ikosa.
You stop the car that made the mistake.
No ngo muhagarika atwara imodoka ahantu hari.
When I stopped him, he drove the car a very long distance.
No ngo muhagarike zanga n'umunyamurenge.
And when I stopped him, I found that he was Banyamulenge.
Naramutonganyije kubera yuko bwari uburenganzira bwanje kumutonganya.
I yelled at him because it was my right to yell at him.
Nubona amatara niba atari nawo baje guhagarika hagarara bakomeze nta kibazo.
If you see the lights and even though you're not the one committing the crime, still stop and stand and they'll continue.
Iyo watinze guhagarara tuzadutekereza ngese karitegura kugira gute. Hari imbunde afite karahisha ibiyoza bwenge bimeze.
When you take long to stop or to stand, we start thinking, are they hiding drugs? Do they have a gun?
Ikindi kandi abasore cyane niba umuntu aguhagaritse polisi aguhagaritse reka kuzana impaka.
Another thing, especially for the youth, if an officer stops you, do not go back and forth.
Niba kubwiye ngo wakoze ikosa niba naguhaye na tike hari ahantu uja kuvuga uja mu rukiko ukavuga ati bandenganyije.
Even if I give you a ticket, there's a place that you can go to take care of it within court.
Yuko abasore bacu cyane abasore baba bakurira hano bafashe imico babona kuri internet ngo black n'ibiki hari igihe ushobora kwirenganya wenyine.
Especially with our youth, they've grown up here and they've seen the things within the society that says, oh, because they're black. There's times where you can offend yourself or put yourself in that problem.
Komeza. Menya uburenganzira bwawe.
Know your rights.
Ntutekereze yuko ubizi.
Don't think that you know them.
Nibyo abindi navuze abantu bigira abana bacu bigira kuri internet bakumva yuko ngo abirabura bararenganyijwe hano.
That's the stuff that I was talking about where our children look on the internet and say, oh, the black Americans were overlooked.
Kandi iyo mvuze gutyo bazavuga ngo nuko ndi mu ruhande rwabo niko bazavuga ngo kira ngo wabaye umwe muri bo.
And when I say that, they say, oh, it's because you're an officer, you're on their side.
Ariko nuko hari bizonzi bitari hara kuri internet.
But it's because there's stuff that I know that is not on the internet.
Mu gitabo cyanje nanditse ukuntu umwirabura yanyise ngo ndi racist. Umwirabura.
In my book, I wrote about how a black American called me racist.
Icyo kikwereka yuko ni kintu abantu bishizemo bumva gusa ni racist.
That shows you that it's something that people put within their mindsets where they just say, oh, they're just racist, they're racist.
Komeza.
Continue.
Nabivuze hariya kwirinda peer pressure cyangwa se kuja kuri internet nabo mukurana nabo.
I already talked about it, avoiding peer pressure.
Reka mvuge kuri ibintu bijanye na scamming.
Let me talk about this stuff concerning scamming.
Kuri internet hari ibintu bibi cyane byinshi.
On the internet there's many bad things.
Hari ama links amwe atagaragara ko ari link runaka ikujana ahantu runaka.
There are certain links that aren't real links that take you in another location.
Cyane kuri Facebook.
Especially on Facebook.
No wayikandaho.
And then when you press it,
muri bukarya nabasobanuriye uburyo abantu bakora ibyaha mu mategeko.
You remember how I already explained how people do the crimes
knowing,
intentionally, recklessly, knowingly.
Ukanze kuri link wenda iyo link ikujanye kuri child porn.
You press that link and let's say for example it takes you to child pornography.
Nukuvuga ngo abana bagurishwa bagakoreshwa imibonano mpuzabitsina mu buryo ntibyemewe mu mategeko.
It has to do with selling children within the pornography world.
Ukanze ya link itagaragara ko ari link.
When you press that link that doesn't show that it's a link.
Wenda namatsiko cyangwa se urabona haje baza amalink azaza kama kwereka $100 ari hadigira gutya.
Maybe you're just curious or it's where the links pop up and it's showing you money.
Ukamvuga ati ninkanda ndakize.
I say, "Oh, if I press it, I'm rich."
Iyo ukanze ugasanga ukanze ikintu utemere gukanda.
If you press it and you find that you press something that you're not supposed to press, within the law you get punished even if you pressed it without knowing. That's where I was talking about how we have punishments whether we know it or we don't know it. Concerning scamming, there are people that ask me, why don't you answer the phone? Because when I entered this field, I knew many things that are outside that you cannot know. There are many people who steal money from people. They can just ask you for your name. Or they could just say, hey, aren't you so and so? And then you say, oh, this person knows me, and you give all your information. And these traps aren't fallen by just those of us that aren't from here. There are many people from back home that have received these problems. Those that were born here, including the Caucasians, they have those problems. They are stolen from every day. Separate yourself from curiosity. Scamming is a very important thing. When it comes to reporting a car accident, there's people where they'll have a car accident and then they don't report it. They report it after a few days. We can't help you with anything. Or you get into an accident with someone and they tell you, let us not call the cops, we'll have our own understanding, I'll give you money. When they set you in that trap and you don't call, the fault is yours.
Okay, I'm
almost done. There's about 2 more slides left.
Criminal record.
A criminal record. Something that goes on your name. People ask me, do Caucasians not have mercy? If I'm talking about Caucasians, you see how she's explaining that word. We have an understanding as if they are the owners of the country.
The
laws here are very powerful. When you have a record under your name, it stops you from many things. It stops you within employment or finding a job. Getting loans. There are people here that it is written that they're sexual offenders for the rest of their lives. Their whole lives, where you can go on the internet and you can see where they live in your neighborhood. Over there I talked about the different problems that can be caused from a criminal record. Even if you have a criminal record and something small, stop there so that it doesn't increase.
Yeah, naho narisha kurangiriza kubera yuko ngira ngo turaza kubona umwanya w'ibibazo n'ibisubizo muri abire ni batubaje ibibazo byinshi umwanya urabura ubwo ngubwo turamenye ukuntu tubyitwaramo.
That's where I wanted to stop. I think we'll have time.
turamukanye mu izina rya Yesu.
Let us greet each other in the name of Jesus.
Abantu ntimugire ubwoba, polisi nta mapinga afite, ntabwo afunga.
People, do not be afraid. The officer does not have handcuffs. He's not going to arrest y'all.
twazanye namubwiye ngo ababarira abakristo ba none.
We came together and I told them to forgive the Christians for today.
Noneho je bampaye sije igoye.
They gave me a hard topic
yo kubwira abantu ngo baje ku masomo.
to tell people to go to school.
Nimba hari topic igoye ku isi hano muri Amerika no muri Afrika.
If there's a hard topic in the world, here in America and in Africa,
ni ukubwira abantu ngo baje ku masomo.
it's to tell people to go to school.
Je uko babwiye nitwa Mwungura.
Just like they told you guys, my name is Mungura. Christopher.
Mfite umugore umwe.
I have one wife.
N'abana Imana ishoboye yabashe kumpa nk'abangahe nk'abatandatu gusa ntabwo ari benshi.
God gave me about 6 kids. It's not too much.
Abo ndabashimira Imana.
I thank them. I thank God for them.
Noneho jewe nageze deviation gatoya hano.
I had a small deviation here.
Kubera ko nasanze impamvu nagize deviation muri topic bampaye.
The reason why I had a deviation within the topic that they gave me.
Nashatse kugira ngo nerekane nk'abakristo twebwe ese dukenera iki kuja kwiga.
I wanted to show as Christians ourselves, why do we need to go to school?
Nkuko babivuze nakoze mfite bachelor's nabyigiye byose hano.
Just like they said it, I have a bachelor's. I earned it here.
Na kuri Hardin-Simmons University.
At Hardin-Simmons University.
Nakoze masters.
I got my master's.
None ko ndarangiza PhD.
And I'm completing my PhD.
Muri public and foreign policy.
In public and foreign policy.
Ni ibintu bitari byiza cyane ku bantu bafite umutima woroshe.
It's not very good for people who have a soft heart.
No gukorana n'ibibazo by'isi.
It's to work with the problems of this world.
Ibyo byose nabikoze mfite urugo.
I did all those things with the family.
Nkiga.
I would go to school.
Nakoraga ijoro.
I worked nights.
Apana tutuzi twanyu tworoshe.
Not y'all's easy jobs.
Ko guterura amakazi. Ni bande basore bateruye amagazi ya hano mbarebe. Nta numwe ugashobora.
How many young men here carried
amakazi ya Fanta?
Oh, cartons of soda.
Cases.
Or cases of sodas.
Niko nakoraga ijoro.
That's what I used to work during the night. At Pepsi.
Ngakora ijoro.
I would work nights.
Nkava mu kazi saa 12 saa moya.
I would leave the job 6 a.m. or 7 a.m.
Nkagenda nkoga gusa.
I would go and just shower.
Ngafata energy zose ziba ku isi.
And I would take all the different energy drinks.
Monster,
Red Bull,
coffee, Starbucks, 5 shots, espresso abazizi.
Coffee, Starbucks, 5 star.
Ibintu byose bishoboka ku isi.
Everything that's possible on earth.
Kaja muri class saa 2.
And then I would go to class at 8.
Ntabwo yari online, yari on campus.
It was not online, it was in person.
Kiga.
I would go get my education.
Nagira break.
During my break,
kagenda nkajana umugore nawe akaja ku ishuri.
I would take my wife to school as well.
Ngasigara n'abana.
And I would stay with the kids.
Ngacumba gatsima gatoya kanje n'akabana.
I would make fufu or a small fufu for me and the kids.
Yava ku masomo.
When she came from school,
nkaja muri library.
I would go to the library.
Ngasoma kugeza saa 8 z'ijoro.
And I would read until
muri weekend.
2 a.m.
Yeah, weekend
in the weekend.
Iminsi tari weekend narigaga kugeza amasaha yo kuja mu kazi ageze.
When it wasn't the weekend, I would study until it was time for me to go to work.
Mu myaka ine yaje bachelor's.
In my 4 years getting my bachelor's,
naryamaga amasaha 3 cyangwa 2 cyangwa rimwe sindyama.
I used to sleep 3 to 2 hours, or sometimes I wouldn't sleep at all.
Ibyo mbivugiye iki?
Why am I saying that?
Kugira ngo wumve ko nta kintu kidashoboka washatse kugikora.
So that you can hear that there's nothing that's impossible if you want to do it.
Uko mpaye niga.
As I was studying,
madamu yaratwitaga agakora ikizami yamara kabyara ejo.
My wife would get pregnant, she would take an exam and then give birth the next
kandi
day.
muri nursing abantu bazi nursing ni section mbi cyane.
And within nursing, and you guys know how hard nursing is.
Nzanibuka umwana wacu umwe yakoze exam on Thursday.
I remember one of our child had an exam on Thursday.
On Monday arabyara.
And then on Monday she gave birth.
Murumva ko atari ibintu byoroshye.
You guys can hear that it's not easy.
Ariko twarice turavuga ngo nta kundi gatwoba muri kino gihugu.
But we sat down and said there is no other way for us to be in this world.
Abakozi b'Imana twemeje gukorera Imana.
As servants of God who have agreed to serve the Lord,
igitambo ari kuri twebwe.
We have to give a sacrifice on ourselves,
abana bacu,
our children,
n'abandi bantu bazaturebera.
And other people who will look up to us.
Jewe kubwanje hari ibintu bibiri byatumye nje ku ishuri binanjishira muri topic yanje.
Me on my own, there are 2 things that caused me to go to school that also caused me to enter into my topic.
Hari ikintu bahoraga bumva ngo abantu nakunda gusoma cyane ugasanga abantu b'abapagani aba atheists.
I used to love to read a lot, and I would read about atheists.
Bakavuga ukuntu abakristo ari abantu
And they would talk about how Christians are they're just there.
Bazana science bakatwereka ukuntu there is no God, there is.
When they would bring their science, they would show us how there is no God and other things like that.
Ari nayo mpamvu nagiye muri foreign policy.
And that's why I went into foreign policy.
Kubera ko nashatse kuvuga ngo nerekane ko nakorera Imana kandi nkayikora mu isi muri politike y'isi.
I wanted to show that I can serve God and serve Him within the politics of this world.
Muri uku kwezi kwa kane April.
In April.
Nari mfite conference na publishing article ivuga ngo ikibazo cha promotion of democracy and homosexuality in Africa.
I published an article in April talking about the issue of homosexuality and democracy.
Yeah, and the promotion of democracy in Africa.
The promotion of democracy in Africa.
Ukuntu America kubera gupromoting ibintu za homosexuality bizatuma na democracy abantu batazayumva.
And I showed how in America how they promote homosexuality, it's going to hinder democracy in Africa.
Noneho nerekana uburyo ibyo bintu mpera muri Amerika uburyo Amerika yubakiye ku masengesho yahereye kuri biblical values.
And I started on how America started off on the foundations of biblical values.
Ariko ikagenda itakara ikagenda yinjizamo ibintu bidafite agaciro.
But they continue to go away and they continue to enter things that don't have value.
Mike Pompeo n'abandi bantu bakomeye.
I was with Mike Pompeo and other powerful people.
Iyo ni platform Imana yanshizemo kubera education.
That is the platform that God put me in because of my education.
No, ndavuga bampaye topic iravuga ngo feed your faith.
When they gave me this topic of feeding your faith,
ndibaza ese twebwe tuzi what is faith.
I asked myself, what is faith?
If you go to the next slide.
Go to the next slide.
Ndavuga ngo reka tuganire ku bintu bitatu. I'm going to discuss 3 things nimara nicare.
I said we'll discuss 3 things and then I'm going to sit down.
Turabaza what is faith?
We're going to ask what is faith?
How do we feed faith?
How do we feed faith?
And why do we feed faith?
And why do we feed faith?
Ni kubera ko kwizera kwacu niki kwizera kwanza niki?
What is faith?
Kuko nk'abakristo niba tutumva ijambo kwizera,
if we don't, as Christians, don't understand the word faith,
imyizerere yacu nta kivuze.
Our beliefs mean nothing.
Turumvikana neza ngaho.
Are we understanding each other?
Turabuzumva neza.
Do we understand it well?
Nimba tutumva kwizera,
if we don't understand faith,
topic baduhaye,
the topic that they gave us,
ntacyo twaje gukora hano.
We didn't come to do anything.
Kandi ibi ni ibintu bikomeye mu bintu ndwana nabyo muri world politics.
And these are powerful things that I fight with in world politics.
Kurwanira beliefs, Christian beliefs.
Fighting for Christian beliefs.
Noneho tugiye kuri slide ikurikiraho.
If we go to the next slide.
Navuze ko tuganira hejuru ya faith.
I said that we're going to discuss faith.
Hari amagambo atatu tugomba kwitiranya abakristo cyangwa se abantu.
There are 3 words that we like to mix up, especially Christians.
Hariho faith.
There's faith.
Hariho beliefs.
There's beliefs.
Hariho na hopes.
And there's hope.
Ibyo bintu biratandukanye.
Those things are different.
Turumvikana neza.
Are we all
iyo
together?
tuvuze ngo dufite ko turavuga kwizera.
When we say that we're talking about faith,
tituba tuvuga beliefs.
We're not talking about beliefs.
Aho turabuzumva sinzi aho niba turi kumujega ndi professor muze musubiza.
I'm a professor. I need you guys to respond like a teacher. I'm a teacher.
Ukwizera,
faith,
n'imyizerere,
and our beliefs,
n'ibyiringiro,
and hope.
Hope uzumva bazavuga ngo habaho false hopes.
You guys hear people say that there's false hopes.
Bakavuga ngo hariho false beliefs.
Or they say that there's false beliefs.
Ariko ntawe uzuvuga ngo habaho false faith.
But no one talks about false faith.
Ndagira ngo turabuzumva.
I think we all understand that.
Kwizera hari uburyo gutandukanye na birabindi.
Because there's a way that faith is different from those other 2 things.
Kubera ko faith ubwayo,
because faith within itself,
turaza kwireba muri definition neza.
We will look at it within its correct definition.